My guest right now is the GM and president of hockey ops for the Penguins. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the program Kyle Dubas. Kyle, what's your feel for the roster now after your first training camp with the Penguins? How much do you like what you see?
Well, it's been a good camp, Mark. We're happy with the level of competition between the group at all three positions, and feel that the player personnel department has done a great job over the summer and identifying guys to bring in, not only the players that we signed at the NHL and American League level, but also on tryouts to push for contracts and jobs on the team. So I like the depth of the group. We're still in that decision-making mode, and we've still got some battles going here as we head into the last exhibition game tonight in Buffalo.
Was it any different for you to assemble a roster when there's perceived to be a finite window for the core group?
No, I think we tried to supplement the group. We obviously didn't want to supplement with multiple long-term deals to older players, and so our focus was on in free agency some of those younger guys that were available, whether it's Graves or re-signing Tristan Jarry, and then we tried to focus on shorter-term deals to build around the core that exists here that's had success. And then, the Carlson trade was sort of the end of the summer for us in terms of retooling the roster. So I don't know if it was so much different, Mark, because I think the objective was the same, which was to try to build a team that could help the group contend and compete this season.
How's your confidence in the goaltending, especially because you've added so much depth with Nedeljkovic and Hellberg?
Well, I feel good about the depth of the group, certainly. And I think just based on not been around any of these goaltenders at all, with the exception of Garrett Sparks, who's here on an American League contract. I haven't been around these goalies each day. So each of them, in exhibition, but also, going back to the rookie prospect tournament, rather, in Buffalo mid-September, Joel Blomqvist played well there. Taylor Gauthier played well there. Both of them supplemented that with good performances in exhibition. And then I think all three of the veteran guys that have played in exhibition have played well. Alex Nedeljkovic has played well in his games. Tristan's played well in his games, and Magnus, hasn't got as much action just because of the nature of exhibition. But they've all played well, so I'm happy with the depth. Of course, now it's getting everyone to play at their best and reach their potential in season, which is our major focus. So, I feel good about it. I feel confident in the talent of each individual goaltender. I feel confident in the prospects that we've assembled there, that the group that were here prior to me getting here, and excited to see us now push these guys in the season to try to reach their potential.
You're a big believer in depth all the way through the system, aren't you? I think in the past, and really with some teams now, Kyle, there's only much interest in who the first few call-ups might be, but you tend to build lower than that, don't you?
Well, I would like it to be a little bit younger in the depth, Mark, and push. And I think that's on us to replenish the prospect pool and build that out over time. But, I think you can't just have the competition in training camp. You have to have it all through the year. Guys who are at the bottom of the roster have to, even if they make the team, know that it was a very close competition for them, and they have to continue to elevate themselves during the year. And the guys that go down to Wilkes-Barre or even Wheeling have to know that it's going to be very difficult to maintain your roster spot if you're not at your best every day. And I think that the organization here has had that over the longer term. And when I think back to my starting in the league and what the Penguins were all about, and we're just working to try to build that back up here and get it rolling. But I think there's so many injuries now. It's an older group, and I think you have to plan for the fact that on average, players are more apt to miss time as they get a little older, and we want to have ourselves covered as best we possibly can to be ready for anything. Never works out perfectly, and your best laid plans are always put into question and challenged during the year, but it'll be up to us to react during the year as well with different moves that we could make.
Building your bottom six at the NHL level was almost start from scratch. How close are you guys to making your decisions there? How many legitimate battles are still going on? And who stood out in particular to your mind?
I think the battle is definitely still going on. And I think the battles there are basically in the wing positions. It's augmented by the fact that, Jake is, back in practice, Jake Gensel, that is. And, he's pushing and he looks good. So we'll see where that leads in the next week or so. But the battles are still being fought, for a couple of wing positions lower in the lineup. And I think the guy that's been, from the beginning of camp through now, that's, I guess, kind of separated himself and had a very good camp is Radim Zahorna. He's been here pre-signed with the Penguins as a free agent and came over a number of years ago, and it was lost on waivers last year. We actually had him at the end of my time in Toronto. We acquired him at the trade deadline, and he wanted to come back to Pittsburgh because he felt it was his best experience in pro hockey. And so we were fortunate to get him back here, and he's had a very good camp, and he's versatile, can play all three forward positions. And they've got him starting to penalty kill now for us in practice and try to become as versatile a player as possible. So, he's been the one guy I think that's day in and day out in camp been very good. Samuel Poulin, we had him go down to Wilkes-Barre yesterday, but he's had an excellent camp for us after a difficult year last season, which is well documented. And so very proud of Sam and the way that he's performed. And, there's now a big group of guys that are still competing there, Mark, whether it's Vinny Hinostroza, Colin White. There's a group of guys that are in that class that are, some of them are playing tonight. Some of them have already played 4 exhibition games. So we're giving other guys looks. And I think that's kind of, we want it to be difficult when we have to make these decisions, and we'll have to make them in the next day or so.
Now, you mentioned the PK. Do you feel like you guys have enough PK depth? And I'm not just talking up front. I'm talking on defense, too.
Up front, I feel good about it. Just with the number of guys that we have there that have, sorry for the background noise here in Buffalo. The guys up front, I think, feel very, very good about that. But the guys on the back end are a little bit more. We're testing out a lot more guys there and trying to get a sense for where everybody fits and where everybody can push. And I think it's a great opportunity for guys that maybe have not done that historically on the back end to try to step up and add that to their game. And so we've been happy with it so far in camp, but I think we'd always like to feel that you're fully covered and extremely deep. But I think it's up to us to develop that a little bit as the year goes on as well.
We're talking to Kyle Dubas on the home of the Penguins, 105.9 The X. Kyle, is the fit of Erik Karlsson what you and the coaches want, and or is it a work in progress? Because, no doubt he's going to be successful, but he just plays different.
Yeah, I think when you have a player like that, I think on the surface and at the beginning, it's always well received and everyone's excited about it. But because of the way he thinks the game and the talent that he has in combination, it doesn't always make it very easy to play with. And and that's not on him. It's more on others realizing, that if you get into space and get open, he's going to find you at a level that is fairly prolific, as evidenced by his past his pedigree and awards and production. But I think Eric's done a great job coming in. He's got a great personality, great energy, infectious person, and he's done a great job of making this fairly simple for the others and making life easier on others. He's worked extremely hard over the off season. He's come in great condition, and so it's about gone as well as you hope when you bring in a player of that profile.
What's your relationship like with Karlsson since he's got here in the core 3-2, Sid, Gino, and Tanger? How important is it for a GM to have a relationship with players like that?
I think it's always important to have a good professional relationship where they feel like they can come to you and be open about where they're at, but also that the trust forms where you can be extremely demanding of them and express to them when they need to do things differently or adapt. And I think that's where I'm work to get to with all of them. I don't mean that in any negative way, other than it's not going to happen, until we probably go into the season and through a season together, and all the season entails in terms of the ups and downs and different things that happen during the course of a year, whether it be injury or slumps or different things of that nature. I think those relationships have to form over that time, Mark. I think in the off season it's very easy and everything is very optimistic and rosy, but I think the time when a team needs the leadership and management most in that regard is when it's not going well. And I think that applies to everybody. And it's, frankly, one of my favorite parts of the job, because I think when you're going into a year and everyone's fairly optimistic about it, and everyone feels, excited about where it's at, and the off season is well received, that's great. But it's when you have your first losing streak, your first bad game, or things are not going the way that everybody wanted, that I think myself and Sully, that's when we need to be at our best, and that's the part I enjoy about this more than anything.
How much input will you have with on-ice decisions? Because any GM assembles a roster to be used a certain way. The word dictates strong, but how much input will you have?
Well, I think I don't know if you're referring to the systems or the lineup, but I think that the answer for either of those is, I think that's why it's important that especially in hockey, that the general manager and the coach have a great relationship. And I think, that's the one, Sully and I have spent a tremendous amount of time together this summer. And I think the style that I've always employed in this position has been, when we make any decisions on the personnel side, I may not always agree with the coaches or do what they want, but I think it's important to at least have them give their input and seek their input. And, and Sully's been great as well in terms of, seeking our involvement and asking for our involvement on everything to do with the team from his perspective as the coach. So on that front, I think the minute that you start undercutting the coaching staff, or the minute that you start dictating the coaching staff the way that it has to be, I think the players feel that, and it doesn't foster any real positive chance of success, Mark. So for me, I think the key answer to your question is that it's up to Sully and I to always and continually be working together to do what's best for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we're not always going to agree on everything. We're going to have our disagreements on any number of matters, but that's why I think the relationship where it's at right now and where it will continue to grow and develop will be huge for our team.
With the amount of talent you guys have available, we're going to talk about the power play all year, which definitely seems a work in progress right now, doesn't it?
Well, I think anytime you add a player such as Eric, and then you move a player like Chris to a position that he's not executed a lot, I mean, that's why it's good to, I'd rather the power play struggle now and not look great now than look great right now and firing on all cylinders, and then come opening night when everything's, there's a lot more on the line, it starts to struggle. So I think the struggle now is I actually like that it's not fired, like it's not dominating games, and it's been a bit of I don't think adversity is the right word in preseason ever, but I think it hasn't been perfect, and you can sense the guys are cognizant of that, and the coaching staff is cognizant, but I'd much rather them work through that now than once the season starts, because all too often you see in the preseason groups look great and they feel great going into the year, and then it starts for real and they're not quite at the level they thought, and it's harder to fix then than it is now. So I think with the new personnel, it's going to take a little bit of time, and happy that we're going through it in the preseason.
Here's an odd question. How do you like the roster for 3-on-3 overtime and for shootouts? Because those can be awful big points.
Well, I think there's no doubt, and that's been a discussion point with Sully and the players as well, and something that the team is very cognizant of. I think the team played 18 games were decided in overtime last year, or 18 between overtime and shootout. I'm not exactly, don't know it off the top of my head, but those are huge points, absolutely. And, being, one or two to the better on the side of the coin flip that represents your team can make all the difference in the world, whether it's making the playoffs or not, or whether it's having home ice in the first round or not, or winning your division or not. And so anything that's on the line that can dictate our team's ability to accrue points, we take very seriously. I know the coaching staff has. With regards to the shootout, I think the team has players that have performed very well in that regard over the course of their whole career. Ricard Raquel probably being one of the best, and obviously in 3-on-3 overtime, I think certainly you look at the first two or three groups that are going to go over the boards, and especially with Chris Letang and Eric Carlson on the back end to lead it, I think you feel pretty good about your chances as long as you have solid principles in place, even though it's more free-flowing.
Now, you've expanded the hockey staff considerably since you got here. Talk about the importance of those increased numbers. I wonder how you're going to fit them all in the same executive suite.
Yeah, it's a much smaller group than we've had in Toronto. I just think it was very light. Obviously, the ownership made a lot of changes before I came on, but I think even in the past several years, there's been a bit of a I think a lot of the people who were here are now in Vancouver with Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, and so we needed definitely to add somebody on the assistant GM level. We've got two bright hockey people in Amanda Kessel and Trevor Daly that I view them as in development, and we're trying to do everything we can to bring them along in their own managerial careers. So Jason Spezza is sort of the one that I lean on, Mark. And then we've got Vuki Mapofu, and he joins us from the LA Kings. And he's in charge of our league compliance and salary cap matters and contract matters. And then near the end of the summer, viewed it as important to bring in some experience, and we did that with Doug Wilson and Trent Mann. They're both in an advisory and consulting role. So with regards to the people that are involved each day in the operation, there's Jason, Spezza, Vuki Mapofu, Andy Sochier, Eric Heasley, and myself that are in the office there each day. So I think relative to what I'm used to in Toronto, it's actually a much smaller group, and it's been great working with everybody so far.
Finally, Kyle, how do you like it so far? I mean, to me, the whole thing has a real good feel. It got to play out on the ice like always, but
Sure.
but it seems to be pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think everyone feels optimistic, Mark, but I think one of the keys, and I don't know, I think the way I always feel is about this time of the year, you start to get paranoid about looking at your competitors, and you start to get a little paranoid or worried about where you need to continue to improve and get better. And I think, especially when it's so optimistic going in, I think we need to convert that optimism into sort of an earned confidence by going out, playing the way that we're capable and winning games. So, I think it's better to go in feeling good than otherwise. But that always, whether it's right or wrong of me, I always get a little bit worried and paranoid at times around this time of year that we're not quite good enough. We need to continually be pushing to try to find ways that we can improve our team and our operation in general. So we'll keep trying to do that, and certainly look forward to getting the preseason through tonight, and then get on with it on Tuesday against Chicago and get rolling.
Kyle, this was great stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you Tuesday night.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
That's Kyle Dubas, Penguins general manager and president of Hockey Ops. Boy, if he ever wants to get out of general managing, he'd be a pretty good talker on TV or the radio, because just so much packed into what he brought to the show today.